Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com, here with the First Descendant, how to increase your DPS. We're going to go over weapons, Descendants, some basic stuff. Look, I'm not the best player ever. Almost got all the hard mode bosses done, and I went from hitting like a noodle to hitting like a truck. Well, maybe not exactly, but I'm doing a lot better and learned a lot, suffering through the noob pains. I'm here to share with you what I've learned so you can improve your DPS, do the content you want, and absolutely melt them bosses. Let's get started. So first thing to touch on is weapons. There's a lot to increasing your DPS, both your weapons, your Descendants, even your reactors and external components, but the obvious choice here is weapons. Where do you start with and why? So if we take a look at the Tamer, we're going to go into the mods. Now, by default, you don't have any mods here, and you can see the DPS on the left-hand side. There are some very easy mods to really maximize your weapons damage. So the first one most folks know about is Rifling Reinforcement. So firearm attack plus 32%. Firearm attack is the primary way to increase your damage per second, because almost everything calculates based on your firearm attack percentage and amount. So you start with Rifling Reinforcement. You can see that it has 16 cost, which is a hefty amount. You can lower that eventually, but even as a beginner, this is a standard mod, very easy to get a hold of. This is your primary way to increase damage. We'll slot this, and you can see the damage goes up dramatically. 32% total, save, boom. 212,000 plus. Next up is the fire rate. So the faster you fire bullets, the more damage you do. Another beginner-friendly one here, fire rate up, 25% faster fire rate. You can see, save, and we're already at 260,000. These are obviously maxed, that we can lower the mods, and I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. But these two standard beginner mods radically increase our damage. So these two are your bread and butter. Now, what do you do next? If you have access to action and reaction, this also increases firearm attack, and maxed out it's at 61%. It's a hefty cost though, and recoil goes up. So if you add that, this stacks together, so you can have Rifling Reinforcement and action reaction. Now you see it only costs 8 when I actually put it on my bar, because I have the socket for the specific icon here, so it lowers the cost, allowing me to equip more and more mods, more and more capacity. We'll hit save there, and we're up to 379,000 DPS. That's with 3 mods. So do not feel like you have to max out the mod space quite yet when you're a beginner. These two plus this third one makes a massive difference. But we're not done yet. So a couple other ones, you can increase your firearm critical hit damage and critical hit rate. So better concentration is critical hit damage, your crit multiplier, and then better insight is your critical hit rate or your critical hit chance. You put both of those on, hit save, and now we have a lot more crit damage and a lot more crit chance. These also could be optimized and fully increased for even more damage. So that's 5 so far, 4 of them very beginner friendly. Another one you're going to want for boss killing. So when you're out exploring and leveling, boss killing isn't that important, but when you do the Void Intercept battles, it's going to be all about weak points. So weak point insight here is another one that really increases your damage, but not so much on the tooltip, because it shows weak point damage 8%, firearm critical hit rate of plus 1.5%. On the tooltip, not that good, but in actual combat and actual content, it's amazing. Now, another one that I really didn't understand much, and that's status effect related damage. So we look at Chilled Enhancement. Adds chill attack equal to the 8% of the firearm's attack. So that more firearm attack, that base stat, the more this is going to do. So if we add this on here and hit save, notice that our DPS doesn't go up, but every bullet that we hit is going to add at 8% of this number here, which is a lot of damage. Let's go show you. You can see it's doing some electrical damage right there with the status effect symbols, that lightning. That's because I have this electric attack on my trait, which I'll get to a little bit later. So that's another status effect that's proccing consistently via the trait on my gun. So not maxed out, 8%. Let's see what it does. And you can see 1306 proccing, triggering every single bullet in combination with that lightning damage. Now imagine how much more damage that is when every single bullet's adding 1300 plus to your attack. So increase fire rate or increase this chill damage is going to be an enormous amount of damage added to your specific weapon. And this is only 6 mods. So this gives us a well-balanced universally applicable way to set up a weapon mod to increase your DPS. This will change depending on the content and depending on what type of weapon you're using. Some launchers have a lot of status effect chance, so that's really good to lean into, whereas snipers or hand cannons are more burst, not sustained damage. That's more helpful to lean into. But in general, this really increases your damage. An important factor about mods I want you to consider is they grow exponentially. So when we go to enhanced mods, what does exponential mean? I'm not a math major, right? I can barely read. That's why I'm on YouTube. But what it means is they get more powerful the longer you go. So if we take this increased shield, you'll notice that 1 to 2 increasing, it will increase the capacity, but it's 6.4%. And if we get like this one here, from 5 to 6, that's a lot more percent, almost 15% increase. So the further you go with the mods, the further more powerful they get. So when you start ramping them up, it'll be really annoying because the capacity, you won't have the space for it. But you want to hone in on 3, 4 specific ones early on and increase those rather than spreading out your resources. Okay, so now how do you increase your space? And I go module setting, max capacity up. These energy activators, they're what allows you to expand by 30 and max your capacity up. Now, when you play the campaign, you're going to get 2 of them for free. What I'd recommend doing is upgrading the Thunder Cage. Everyone's going to use the Thunder Cage. It's great for clearing trash. It's great for leveling. So increasing this, you're going to use this gun. You can even use it in some boss encounters as well. And you also want to max out your main Descendant, okay? So what I'm playing right now is a combination of Ultimate Ajax or Ultimate Lepic. I just like those characters. What I used mine on was Bunny. That's not a bad choice because Bunny is used to grind everything in the game. Lepic, Ajax are my go-to. The sweaty endgame players are going to pick Glaze. She's the best for damage currently. So use that specifically what you intend your main to be and don't blow it just like, oh, what's this? Now, another way you can add capacity, and I saved this just for this point, is assign module socket. So what this does is it matches up the socket with the individual mods using this crystallization catalyst. You get a bunch of these from just playing the campaign. You can also buy them, shocker. So it's going to give those symbols that lower your mod by half. So if we looked at this, obviously the one we want to do is rifle reinforcement, right? Because we're going to be using this constantly and it's probably never going to go away. So if we hit this, assign mod capacity, it's going to be the 3-bar one. I'm going to hit it here and hit it here. Now, once I hit apply socket, it will reset the level proficiency. So you're constantly going to be cycling these weapons and trying to min-max and get as many slots in as possible. So I hit that, I got that catalyst assigned, my weapon proficiency goes down, so it's not going to be nearly as effective as a fully maxed out level 40, but you can see, look at how much more capacity I have to increase my mods. Now I can take this chill one that I'm going to use, or I can get more crit with better concentration and better insight. My crit hit rate's a little bit lower, so I'm going to try to optimize this a bit further, and let's see what happens when I crank this puppy up. So I maxed that out, and that's at fire critical hit rate of 39. If I go back into the stats of my Tamer, now I'm at 427,000 DPS, with a critical hit rate of 40%, critical damage of 37, and I have a lot more capacity left to keep on increasing. So let's crank up better concentration. So of course I ran out of Kyber, but I got this one maxed out almost one away, and you can see my DPS is even further increased, 450,000 now. So I would increase this by 1. Also, I have chill I can increase. I have weak point insight, which will not show up on the tooltip. But your end-game cycle for increasing your DPS and increasing the weapons revolve around using that energy activator to increase the capacity by 30, and then leveling up the proficiency in a couple of different grind spots, resetting those and adding sockets. As you add more and more sockets, you can further enhance the DPS by these, or very specific rare and ultimate ones. One very good is the defensive master. It's an enormous cost, but when defeating an enemy, your defense goes up by 128% for 10 seconds. As you level this up, it lowers the cooldown. So this is one of the best to actually pick up for people that are struggling with survivability. It's hard to fit on your bar at first, but as you become more and more proficient and you get more and more of those sockets, consider Defense Master because it will make you extremely survivable even in boss fights. Next up, let's talk about weapon traits. So you saw that I was doing some electric damage, hopefully you didn't skip ahead. How dare you skip ahead? Electric attack 1400. So that's a really good thing to have on your weapon traits. I think they're called characteristics. So firearm critical hit damage, critical hit rate, weak point damage. That's not a bad roll there. So let's take a look at a couple of weapons and see how big of an influence this makes. So if you look at this guy here, immediate execution, hand cannon. So the damage looks pretty good. Toxic attack, firearm attack of 11%. And I go over to this one, notice the DPS drops off significantly. 91,000 versus 96,000. Well, the reason why is the fire attack is really nice on there of 5,300. But we have the firearm attack of 11% base. So that will increase up the base amount of the damage that you have with that one specific trait versus this one. Though the fire attack and the gold quality is absolutely incredible. So what you're going to want to do at endgame is try to get that firearm attack in general for most weapons. It might be explosive attack if you're using a launcher or some other type of thing. So you're going to go to weapon readjustment and you're going to be looking for those very specific ones. So this is a good one here, electric attack, firearm critical hit, firearm critical weight, and weak point damage. Pretty good spread here. But you can spend a lot of resources mid-maxing this even further and gain firearm attack to increase your floor. When your floor increases, your ceiling increases. Another one not to sleep on is attribute status effect trigger rate. So when you're using those elemental mods, do not sleep on burning, chilled, and proccing those elemental status effects, specifically on grenade launchers where you might be hitting multiple targets or rocket launchers. That can proc and trigger a lot of damage, especially if you're using multiple different types of elemental status effects. Another important factor you need to consider with your weapons is the effective drop-off range. So it indicates the distance at which the firearm attack starts to drop off gradually. So 35 meters. So you can come to the range and kind of see when your damage starts falling off. So you're always maintaining that range. This is another important factor, especially within boss fights, where you have to be up close and personal to those bosses to get the maximum amount of damage. This is what really adds to a weapon's power, is being able to be a little bit far back and having a little bit more space to breathe and still maintain optimal damage. And you can come down here and see the electric attack that's going to be added based on the attribute that's on my weapon already. Another thing is movement speed. The heavier the weapons, the larger the weapons, the less movement speed. Smaller weapons like the Thunder Cage, ideal for characters using bunny or want high movement and mobility. Now your reactor will affect mainly damage from your skills, not so much your weapons. External components will affect your damage from your weapons. So I have the Annihilator set, firearm attack increase proportionally the ratio of max HP to HP loss. That's helpful when using Ajax, who has a lot of HP. So external components you can find later on at the end game with unique and interesting set bonuses, and these will help you out even optimizing your DPS further on your armor. So we're going to switch to Lepic here, who is mainly more of a damage dealer type Descendant versus my other guy. Now, first thing up I'm going to do is come over here to reactors and make sure I got the right reactor. I have Greg's Reverse Fate mounting, so that's going to apply when I have Greg's Reverse Fate. You can get some of these purple ones that just require a weapon type equipped. So it could be on your back bar, it could be your 2 key, your number 1 key. Those are usually a little bit more accessible and easy if you don't have the ultimate weapons loaded out, ready to go. So this one here increases fire tech. I have the weapon increased. You'll see the 2 set bonuses at the bottom. Fire skill power boost ratio, in addition skill attack attacking Legion of Immortality. This is really hard to find the mid-max versions of these, the 2 set bonuses at the very bottom. So you can see example of here of a gold quality one, but additional skill attack when attacking order. That's okay, but even though it's gold, it has a weird weapon mounting that I have to have, and the set bonuses are not that good. Now, if I come to something like this, Toxic Phase Reactor obviously is not going to be for this individual character, but skill critical hit rate gold at 32%. That's a mega bonus. So don't always look at just the quality and what the weapon is, but look at those 2 individual bonuses at the bottom that will radically increase your performance and your skills. Now, Lepic's character is really revolved around this ultimate or overkill. It changes your arm into this huge cannon, you shoot out this nuke, it does damage over time, it's awesome. So this is the boss melter using fire and tech, the overkill ability specifically is kind of what you're optimizing for. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is equip something like this Shock Punch, which lowers the individual cost of your mods by 10 when it's max. That's your number 1 priority because you get more mod capacity. The one I like the best is long distance maneuvering. You can get this pretty easily by just grinding one of the dungeons and whatnot, and that gives you a little bit more range. It does increase the base charge time. Mid-air maneuvering is another one, but stick with Shock Punch or a basic one. Optimize that so you can increase your capacity. Now, there's a couple of mods that are kind of similar that do some of the same thing, and that's emergency measures. So skill critical hit rate, skill critical hit damage. You can put that on, and even at the base with one of these sockets, I have it at 3 costs. Very, very cheap. It also stacks with what's called front lines. So skill critical hit damage and skill critical hit rate. Basically the exact same mod. Those bonuses stack together, giving you 23% skill critical hit rate and 23% skill critical hit damage. Now the next one you can do, which is kind of generalized, is Technician. So skill power modifier. You put that down, and this is one of the sockets, so it's really, really cheap. This is one you're going to want to really ramp up because it's skill power modifier. Very, very helpful for this specific build and overkill, because if you look at our exclusive weapon burst damage column, skill power is what determines how much damage this will do. So we really want to ramp that up. And then you have a couple other stacking crit ones that you can do. So skill insight, skill critical hit rate, we'll increase that. Skill concentration, and we can increase that. We hit save, and you can see we're at 37%. Now, ideally, you could max out emergency measures and front lines and kind of save these two, okay? So what I'd highly recommend most players do, if you don't want to be a noob like me, is increase HP. Increase HP and increase defense are the two bread and butters for surviving even on a DPS character. You hit slot both of these two, it will increase your HP dramatically along with your defense, making you much more survivable. So lean into the emergency measures front line, get that maxed out to have a good amount of critical hit damage and critical hit rate, but you got to survive. You're doing 0 damage if you can't survive. So those two are essential. Don't worry about shields. They're a junk stat typically for most builds. Defense and HP are your #1 priorities, and you really want to increase them. So we got those two there. Now, what you can do from here is your individual trait. So you could do Tech. Tech Specialist increases Tech Power combo. Tech Master increases your spell power and Tech skill power. You can also do Fire as well. So Fire Specialist, Fire skill power plus 20%. What you're really looking for here is your individual Descendant attribute. And then a couple other really good ones that people sleep on is Spear and Shield, because it increases defense and skill power, along with time distribution, skill cooldowns, and max HP. And then Battle of Stamina, increase max HP and skill duration. So if I hit save here, now this guy has 400% more HP almost, and 250% defense more. And he has a lot of capacity for damage as well. Now you can strip off these individual ones and really rank up Tech and Fire and so on, but remember, it's all about surviving. If you can't survive, you're going to be doing 0 damage. So the bread and butter really is emergency measures, front lines, Technician, increased HP and defense, and then kind of lean into that specific element like Fire or Tech or whatever you're doing to really good damage, but also good survivability. Because you can see here at Lepic, not fully mid-max or anything with all the best traits and whatnot, but 12k HP, that's pretty generous. And with 40,000 defense, you really don't want to go over 40,000. That's kind of diminishing returns point. So we could mid-max this a little bit better by maybe dropping a defensive mod. So you're going to beat the campaign, you're going to expand your mod capacity, reach max level, and then reset those levels, increase the mod capacity. Then you're going to work towards completing those boss battles. Getting through all of the hard mode ones is really the end game grind. You're going to min-max your character by optimizing those weapons with the best traits and even transcendent mods on your Descendants. Then you're going to max out all of those module sockets for the ones you use and increase your best in slot mod capacity to the fullest. And hopefully by then you'll be able to beat the hardest and most difficult bosses the First Descendant has. Gang, if you got something out of this video, like and subscribe and let me know in the comments that this was good and helpful, and I'll keep working on it. What video do you want up next? Let me know, and I'll make it. Thanks for watching.